This is the longest stretch I've gone without writing in my entire adult life. I haven't been able to sustain a reading habit. I've probably maybe, I don't know, 8 books that I've started and read half to 2/3 of and then put down. And I remember a mentor and writer, he told me once, I was thinking about moving maybe like 5 or 6 years ago or 7 years ago or something. And I remember he told me, oh yeah, you won't be able to write much when you move. And I thought, I was really resistant to what he was saying. I was like, wait a second, no, I could write at any time. What are you talking about? And then as it came into my reality that I was moving, I got to this point where there was so much change happening, both with moving and with like 2 other life changes that were happening. I just had to stop writing and reading and realize that I didn't have capacity in my life to sit for large amounts of time, but I'm on the other side now. And I like to just tell the story of the past 3 months, really the past year since January, what's happened, how I got here, and what's to come next. And especially like what reignited my writing habits. But first I want to show you the house. This is kind of akin to my old days in that in the move, I lost my battery. I think one of the very first videos I had no battery. But the best room in the house is the bathroom. And I think an important thing to have, hold on, let me get my microphone situated. Let's just prop that there. Hold on. Let me pause this. Oh, dropped Goethe. How to Get Control of Your Time in Your Life. Chinese Karate Kung Fu, the Silum System. I've got G.K. Chesterton's Orthodoxy. I've got Coral and Jim Lorenzen's Abducted, Confrontations with Beings from Outer Space. The I Ching, Goethe. And my favorite, The Pocket, Chogyam Trungpa. So I just like, instead of being on my phone, I'll just like... Let's try 51. Just be. Just be with your breath. Be with your discursive thoughts. That purity brings a sense of release and a sense of peace, which is known as individual salvation. Peace, in this case, means being without complications. It is not a state of tranquility per se. It is just basic simplicity and basic ordinariness. That peace, that simplicity is empty by nature. It has nothing to dwell on or with. Therefore, it is basically fresh and clean, free from dirt, free from sloppiness. It is empty. That is so much more potent than anything I'm going to look at on my phone or like shop for. So this is a sacred room. The bathroom is a sacred room. And having Chogyam Trungpa and some kung fu literature in here is beautiful. Let's continue the tour to I can't. This is plugged into the wall, so give me a second. Okay, tour. Book stacks. Moving my books from my old place was very, very interesting. I didn't put them in boxes because it'd be too heavy and unwieldy. So I just moved them in stacks about this high, maybe a little bit less, all in my car and just did like load after load. I kind of like wanted to keep this space freer of some of my stuff that I had in my last writing space for multiple reasons, but this is just like a clean, fresh place and a clean start. So I just wanted to like have the chance to not be inundated with stuff. But is this this is fine. Yeah, this is good. Here's the space. I don't know if I did a just tour of the space. Probably the last time you saw me was in July. End of July, basically until a week ago yesterday, I was not writing at all. I had totally put it away to move. For the most part, I'm like completely settled in this new spot. And then I felt like, okay, I have the space and the time to write again. So how did I get back into writing? What happened? Other than all of my life changes getting kind of cleared away, there were three things that were very helpful to me. Number one, it's an app. It's called Opal. This is not a sponsorship. I'll never have sponsorships on this, but it's something that I think is really important in my creative life. I think that I know that space and openness and the capacity to listen is fundamental and paramount to the creative, to a true creative, interactive relationship with the world. And being on my phone, on my computer, buying shit, looking at shit, checking shit, the temptation to check and to look if my phone and computer are unblocked is so great that I don't have the capacity anymore to be open. One of the necessary qualities for openness is not intaking, not being consumed with stuff and desire to buy and check and look and get excess information. So the first thing I did was to download and pay for Opal. It's $80 a year. And what's great about that is that I commit from 9 p.m. to 1 p.m. My phone and my computer are completely blocked and cut off to me, other than basic functions. And I can't go into the Opal app and change those settings. So I'm locked out. Same with my computer. Like, I can get on YouTube to post live stream video, but I also have distraction-free YouTube, which is very important to have. So it hides my feed, it hides comments, it hides everything. It's just black, and I can search bar things that I need to look at, and that's it. So Opal saved me, and distraction for YouTube saved me. And I highly recommend them if you're feeling like you don't have enough space mentally, or if you're finding yourself unable to stay with one idea or one pursuit, one description, one narrative for longer than a few minutes. Very quickly, my capacity, my journal entries changed. That's the second thing. Let's just dive into that. Journaling, about a week after I got Opal again and set up the restrictions again on my phone and computer, I had enough space to journal again. Having this as my exercise book has been so helpful. So I felt like I was generating more space by not intaking media in these very fleeting but powerful doses. I knew that I had to retrain my ability to approach one thought for pages and pages and pages. So I started an exercise book, and for every week I would set a goal, an aim in the realm of like description. I want to describe, one week I want to describe like exceedingly difficult things to describe, and just at least for one page stick with a single description. So I'd work on that for a week, and then in my life I would pay attention to something that seemed really hard to get across, and then I would describe it. It helped me expand my capacity for attention and my wherewithal, my ability to like slowly narrow that like tremulous brain activity into like one track. So exercise book, the second thing that saved me, in addition to my exercise book, was keeping a vocabulary journal again. Most of the words that I'm looking up and writing definitions about are words that I've used and seen, but I want to develop a deeper understanding of the shades of these words. Very simple, fun too. Important to note, from an actual dictionary, it has a completely different effect on the mind. Keeping vocabulary and looking online for words versus having a physical dictionary, it's totally different. And the last thing is this book, Conversations with Kafka by Gustav Janusz. And it's from the perspective of a young poet in Prague in the early 20th century, 1917, 16, 15-ish, whose dad works at the workman's accident insurance company that Franz Kafka works at. And this young poet, his father copies his poems without the kid knowing, gives them to Kafka, and Kafka wants to meet Gustav, this young writer. And Gustav, as best he can, recollects their conversation. He would come and sit in his office and talk to him about writing and reality and the world, or they would go on these long walks through Prague. So this book has brought my creative. I used to, when I was journaling, maybe about 2 years ago, I would call it like stimulating my literary thinking by reading journals and like epistolary, biographical content from literary thinkers. This has like shades of it in a much deeper sense than like stimulating thought. It feels like seeing my like private, creative, and deeply personal creative feelings reflected in some of the things that Kafka was telling this young writer, 100 years ago. So it's been a really reassuring and has filled me with this like connection in like the way that only literature can bring. So that is the other thing that has brought me back to today. I'm a week into working on Lightspeed. So my camera's about to die again from overheating. I'm going to take a little break. All right, so I want to talk about Lightspeed. If you remember, in January or February, I posted a video about, I moved. I lived in a monastery. I lived with 100 monks and nuns and lived this, very quiet, whatever, I came back into daily life, into all my stuff. Slight flashback. So just before I left for Deer Park in October of 2024, I finished the first draft of Lightspeed and got feedback and edits that all were really good. I had good readers. I had David Shields. I had a few other like authors, trusted readers, a small number of good readers read the book. And we all decided that more or less the perspective that I found at the end of the book, not that specifically, but that approach was what I needed to take for the next draft. And so I had this idea of who I wanted to research and what I wanted the book to be. And in October, before I went to Deer Park, a week before I went to Deer Park, so right before, I went on a trip with my dad, and I started on the airplane reading my first bit of research material for Lightspeed version 2. One last thing I'll note before we jump forward in time to the present is that all my life I've had passions. I mean, since I was like a little boy, I wanted to be a professional NBA player. And then after that, I wanted to be a professional this. And then I wanted to be, a world-renowned this. So all of these like deep-seated passion that I would approach with all of my being. They all had this external sort of grab, like hook. If I become a professional NBA player, everyone will love me. if I become a professional, if I become a published, widely read, but highly specific, tightrope literary writer, then I can prove to everyone that this is possible, and not having to sacrifice your literary and creative aims to do it is possible. Over time, these big passions would either, the energy in my pursuit of one passion would start to fork over into another, and then I would leave the other passion behind once I found something new to obsess over. And writing, I felt like, was getting to that point where I was reaching this desperation of reaching, trying to get the almost impossible goal of being renowned and whatever. Like, I mean, truly, that's kind of what I wanted, and not to sacrifice my creative vision. I had this very specific track that at a certain point, like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, if you had asked me to even consider that track not becoming a reality, I would say, and I said this in conversation to myself and to others, I can't even entertain the thought of that not happening, because the energy that I'll produce and not believing in myself will keep me away, will prevent me from getting to where I want to go. So I had no space in my mind for any other option. But years on, and especially with the draft of Lightspeed, I just realized, like, Lightspeed, before it became Lightspeed, was supposed to be this another iteration of a book that I had written to completion that was good but not quite, and wasn't really what I wanted to do. And when I started writing what would become Lightspeed, I had so much pressure and desperation, fear and anxiety, marring the other things that I had in writing and developed in writing, which was this creative contact with the world around me, and a way of electrifying my life and my relationships, and giving meaning to what I was seeing, and creating something that was necessary and whole, and had real creative tact, and did not sacrifice that, you know? I mean, that's what I was feeling I was working towards. At the same time, I was feeling all this despair and anxiety and pressure that I was putting on myself. So I reached this point in my life where I thought something has to change. And I really had a fear. I had a thought that I was like going to have to give up writing. Not that I wanted to, but I didn't know any other way. My whole life had been push something to the very edge of desire for external validation and my utmost patience and limit, and then give it up and find something else. And I was getting that way with writing, and I didn't want to be, but a part of me realized and felt that that was what was happening. I went to Deer Park and I slowly worked on my research, and it was beautiful because all of this, journals, yellow composition pads, all filled with thinking and feeling and research, and it felt very, very, very clean, open, and I was putting this energy of just writing and just having a vision and deepening that vision and the ideas and the world and my sense of these characters and my sense of the time and their thoughts and the space and what's important and the questions that I'm asking. All of that energy was there, and slowly whittling away at this need for all of this stuff to happen. Ophi? Yeah, Ophi's still here with me, everybody. I had all these warning signs, about this narrow, tricky path of trying to not have a creative, not alter a creative vision, but, be a goated writer. I came back from Deer Park and I felt very clear and certain. And finally, after writing feels so different now, even different from July when I wrote in the shadows and in the shadow and the light. Different from all of this year when you maybe was seeing me on live streams when I was working on research for Lightspeed. It feels completely different now. And I have to stop my camera one last time. Let's do like this. That's good. I'm going back through all of these notes that I have, and I'm putting them into this Scrivener app on my computer, which is the most beautiful writing situation. That thing is perfect. Scrivener is 10 times better than Google Docs. It feels so organized and so nice, but that's an aside. The crazy part is that some of this stuff, can you see? 11/13/24. I'm reading not only research, but some of my ideas about these excerpts of research that I'm doing, and my journal entries. Like, I found this one on the day a year later. Let's see. My aspiration, should I begin to try to understand it, involves something of the essence of responsibility. To take responsibility for my thoughts, actions, decisions, for living in the world and all that comes with it, and to be solid enough for others to count on me, to take responsibility for living a life on the path of understanding. In responsibility, there is someone chargeable for their actions, for their decisions, for their life. Bodhicitta is the Sanskrit term that the monks here like to use to refer to this aspiration. Another way to translate it, though, is beginner's mind. So how are aspiration and beginner's mind one and the same? Aspiration, a deep, solid, foundational commitment. Beginner's mind, freshness, seeing for the first time, renewing, doing something again and again without becoming bored, losing faith, or getting off track. So aspiration means to maintain your solidity and commitment, and you must learn ways to stay committed that are fresh. Every day you come in touch with your aspiration in a new way. You see it related in new situations. You see it reflected in new situations. It's adapting, evolving, and it makes failing or going off the path, all of it is acceptable. It's not a deterrent. There's nothing to despair about. You simply begin yet again. Anyway, so I'm seeing these like deep moments of reflection on this book and my research and the characters a year to the day, and I'm in a new space that is so I don't know, this is what it feels like in a good way. Like I'm like being hugged by this space. And I think the biggest thing I feel after this whole year, what's happened is the reflections in the space that I had a year ago. I finally reached this point where there's not this flux, and I'm in one line rather than this desperation to try to get something externally, to be a writer and be made as a writer. It's coming from a place of Lightspeed itself, the book itself. It is necessary, and it's a transmission and an invocation of all of these books, and these writers are coming through the writing. My blood ancestors, if you remember my old writing space, I had all my grandparents and great grandparents, and I had all these photos on the wall, all chastising me and cheering me on in turns, just there. All of these writers that I'm reading, it's not just to read, it's to invoke them into my writing life. And same with this. I'm like ashamed to say it, but like my spiritual ancestors too, this dimension of life that is about having contact with the world and asking, what are you, world? It's cheesy and it's corny and whatever, but and I'm wearing a fucking turtleneck. It's ridiculous. This whole thing is ridiculous. Sharing it is ridiculous, but that's where I'm at. I'm coming full circle, seeing these journal entries and research entries from a year ago, all my ideas about the book coming back to them with this renewed sense of solidity and clarity and direction and purpose, and not despair, non-fear, non-anxiety, so that like getting into phone zone is like not even appealing. Like when the 9 to 1 p.m. when 1 p.m. comes around and Opal turns off, like I'm not that interested in like going on and filling my mind with shit again, because I get to occupy like a intimate space with the world itself, and especially Lightspeed and the book and what's happening in it. So what's to come next? In November, which is the month that we're in, I am just going to get into this research, make sure it's in Scrivener, continue to occupy the like mental and psychic space of the book. I'm having new ideas already and having inclinations about how I want to tell the story, what the narrative float in Lightspeed will be. And there's major decisions to be made. It's not all written, and there are going to be things that I'm not quite sure about, but just have to follow my intuition, which is why being open and listening is so important, and having the space to be open so that you can listen is important. Um, uh, December, I just kind of wrote, because I don't really want to plot this out internally too much, but I just want to share with you what the plans are so you know what I'm doing and maybe can kind of follow along. Or I don't know why you would even want to know, but here we are. December is like starting to play with drafting, I feel like, but not in any serious way, just like how would it feel like to pursue it this way? Or if I make this decision, does that limit me in some other way? January is when I really feel like the wheels of drafting will get rolling to the point where I'm just going to be purely drafting from January for months and months and months into the summer. I would like to propose, if you've made it this far in the video, a writing course group, a very small writing group that I will lead. If this manifests, if it works and people are interested in the right group of people, 7 people total, including me, is the max. People who are writing a long form project. We don't have to like the same things, but ideally you would be writing something long form. Doesn't have to be a novel. It could be a long form essay, but it needs to be something that's going to take you about 6 months worth of work to get where you want to get with it. And the goal is to have a workshop style course without the trappings of a traditional workshop. A traditional workshop does not map on to the novel writing process, to the long form writing process. Typically you take seeds of an idea in a workshop, and then you start to edit the seeds of that idea as if they're the final product. So you get this very sharp, honed in thing that is hollow and anemic. That's not what we're going to do. It would be about pushing ourselves in our accountability and how things are shared and what we're going to like eke out of each other's writing processes and ourselves. So I know that sounds a little abstract, but if you are interested in that, please let me know, because within the next month or so, I want to get a real gauge if this is something that is going to happen. I have a couple people I want to reach out to about it, and then if you reach out to me and you have a project that you have been eyeing or you're working on, reach out to me in the comments and we'll talk about it. And that's an idea that I have. We'll see. Doesn't have to happen, but I think that I have something that I can share and help other people who are really taking this seriously and want to write. And Ophi is going to be in part of the group as well. And I think I have a lot that I can gain and get from a group like that hold each other accountable, reads work, forces you to put out work that's still in what do you call it? Still in progress, still being worked at with the awareness that, um, yeah, we're making each other better. So that's where I'm at. Uh, Ophi, do you have anything to say? Nothing. Nothing to say.